Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody listening today. And today on this podcast assignment we got going for EDUC 661, Equity and College and Career Access, with Dr. Hernandez and her lovely self. We got three members in this podcast group. We got the host, Vincent Austin, the second host.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Miguel.
And our last host.
And this is Ray.
And on this podcast assignment, we will be discussing many topics, and those many topics will be sense of belonging and also undocumented students. If you have any questions or statements you want to respond with, go ahead and feel free to call in and help join the conversation with us today. And you guys, as we're here talking about, those two topics, let's go ahead and get into the start of undocumented students and how you guys feel about undocumented students before we get into the questions that we discussed.
Yeah, so the topic of undocumented students really resonates a lot with me. As a USC graduate student currently working on a thesis on this topic, this is one that I really just wanted to chop up with the boys today. I feel, although I'm not an undocumented student myself, I resonate with this a lot because my parents were. My dad made the move over from Mexico, and he attended college for a little bit as an undocumented student, didn't quite finish up, but then after working for the Navy, getting his situation sorted out in terms of documents, he was able to return and really fulfill those college dreams that he had. So this topic is really special to me, and I just want to, that's why I'm currently trying to do some research on the side, trying to just learn about this population a little bit more and the challenges that they face, and hopefully we could jump a little bit deeper into that today and give you guys an understanding of what it means to be an undocumented student.
Miguel, what's your emphasis on as we get into the topic of undocumented students before we get into the questions?
Yeah, I think understanding the undocumented experience is an important thing that as educators we need to do, just because they're a student population within higher education that is understudied, underrepresented, and often undervalued. So I think once you're able to understand the student population, it allows educators to work with other student populations that may also be experiencing some of the same challenges to some regards. And it's just trying to ensure that there are equitable outcomes for all students, regardless of their backgrounds.
That's a lovely answer, man. And for the first question we got for the undocumented students, man, you guys feel free to jump on in. The first question we're going to go over is, given that we are approaching another election year, what implications do you see for undocumented students in both junior college and higher and 4 universities for those undocumented students?
Yeah, oftentimes in terms of when an election year is coming up, the topic of immigration is often at the forefront. So you'll have both parties discussing what they want to do in terms of immigration, whether it be making policies, educational practices much more harder for the student population to access higher education. And it goes far beyond just access to education, also just basic necessities. But today we'll focus more about the college access that they have. And unfortunately, access to higher education for undocumented students varies from state to state. Undocumented students here in the state of California do have much more access in comparison to an undocumented student that's living in Georgia, for example, where they're able to take advantage of policies such as AB 540, the California DREAM Act, that allows them to pay for in-state tuition and also receive state financial aid to further allow them to go to college, just because the cost of tuition is constantly changing. It's increasing every year. So for this student population, really talking about how the election years may impact them and the implications that it has on their access is a really important topic.
That's a lovely answer, Miguel. And with that question, I would like to say, as we're going into another election year, the implications I do see for undocumented students, we'll see good and bad. And like you brought up the AB 540 and the DREAM Act that's been helping students with the junior college get their tuition paid for is a step in the right direction, though. But as one as one adversity gets handled, I think we all can agree that another adversity question will come up after that one. And also with the election year coming up, and both sides having pros and cons for undocumented people, undocumented students, there's always going to be, how can I say it? They'll say one thing but have a whole different motive and meaning behind it on the back end. So it kind of does worry me because I'm not sure what they're really going to do and what they're really going to implement for those undocumented students in the right direction, education-wise and also career-wise. I do hope to see more resources for them outside of the DREAM Act and the AB 540, which is very helpful, very convenient to those undocumented students though, but there can always be more to help them feel more comfortable being in junior college and as they're going after their academic journeys. So that's my implications for the election year coming up for those undocumented students. And for those undocumented students out there though, with the adversity that you are facing though, still push through it and still work with what you have, because things will change, things will be more brighter for you. Just keep going through it though. Right, how do you feel about the first question of the implications of the new election year for undocumented students?
Yeah, so in regards to the implications for undocumented students, I think that us living in Southern California, our perspectives on this topic are a little bit different because we have such a big undocumented student population that we interact with these students and we tend to care more about them, whereas somebody in Georgia, like Miguel said, there may not be as many undocumented students there, so you kind of forget that these students do need resources. They need extra resources, which is why in our program we throw around this term equity, but I feel like a lot of people don't really understand what that truly means. It's not about being equal or fair. It's more so providing the resources to the ones most in need. And undocumented students are students that are in need. Specifically, I think that some of the legislation here, which benefits them, such as you guys mentioned, the DREAM Act and the AB 540, that allows students to receive financial assistance so that they may not have to work as many hours to pay for their education, and that allows them ultimately to prioritize their studies and to do well and to pass classes rather than repeating classes, staying longer at the community college, and ultimately not meeting the goals that they kind of have set for themselves. So in California, we're really fortunate to have people in power that do tend to think about these experiences, and I think it's just a reminder that what we're doing here can be expanded to different states. I know that Arizona has already began adopting some of our policies, and that's a step in the right direction. But overall, nationwide, I feel like there is a big imbalance, especially when it comes to we hear these left-wing policies, right-wing policies, and for the most part, I think we all kind of agree that the left does care a little bit more about these bodies of students that are underrepresented, whereas sometimes I think the right is a little bit more conservative, trying to stay with the policies that we currently have, which we're seeing are not working. They're not providing the resources that these students need, which is why these students are not doing as well as some of the other students. So I think there's a lot to be done in terms of what we can do moving forward. I think in California, like I've already said, we have something that's going in the right direction, but of course we can always improve upon that. But I think it's a good foundation for the rest of the nation to really adopt and just try to get a little bit more innovative with just thinking about these students and how we can provide them the tools necessary for them to have the same opportunity to succeed as other students that may not have to worry about certain certain things that these students have to face on a daily basis. And one being with the election, some students may not that may not be as important to them because they feel like regardless of who's in power, that they're going to be safe in this country. But I feel like undocumented students, they may feel, you know, an added pressure of like really wanting to get somebody into office that's gonna remember them and you know, hopefully provide them what they need. And I mean, with, of course, like this election, it's gonna be really telling kind of how we move forward and how the next president really goes about these students. But it's also an exciting period because we can put somebody in there that just expands upon what's already been built. And just going into the next question, I wanted to ask you guys how you felt about higher education between systems in California and other states. I know that I kind of touched on it just a tad bit, but I wanted to ask you guys how you felt about that. So feel free to chime in, boys, and then we'll take, we'll hear some different perspectives on that.
I appreciate that, Ray. Appreciate that. And that question you asked was basically the difference between the education systems in California and also other states. I'm a California, LA native. I've never been out of state, like, to really tell in terms of educational systems. Matter of fact, let me take that back. I've been to Alabama one time for a short period of time in elementary school, and of course it's gonna feel different to a kid, being used to Cali educational systems and the way they run their school systems. But I would think California could always do more for their natives in terms of like tuition and also resources. And also even to the out-of-state students who want to come to California for the education. Do we really need to charge them out-of-state in tuition? Why do we need to, bring more stress into them going away from home for education? And also as well, with the out-of-state things, how do you guys make the California or the out-of-state students feel included with things like that? From academically, recreational things like clubs and programs and stuff like that. How do you make them feel included? That is definitely a good question, because I never thought of that question, like what's the difference, or like how can each state improve. I think it could definitely be a start if we always get on one accord under one umbrella and towards the right direction for what we really want for all students, from out-of-state students, undocumented students, African-American, Latino, international students, etc. Get under one umbrella for what's the main mission we're going towards, and then everybody has their own segments in those different schools out of state. Yeah, and that's my answer to it.
I think you brought up some important questions and topics in terms of what you were saying right now, Vincent. So I kind of wanted to change the discussion a little bit. Because you had mentioned that California could do a little bit better of taking care of the people within the state. So one of the things that we all have in common right now at the table is that we're all men of color. So I just kind of wanted to see what your experiences were like in higher education, to see if your identity as a man of color, had a positive impact on you, or if there were negative challenges that impacted you in terms of your identity. Like, did it impact your sense of belonging? Did you feel properly represented? Did you think there was enough resources to support you throughout higher ed?
In terms of identity, being a man of color in higher education, I definitely appreciate being where I'm at and being what I've been through and with my educational journey, so I'll never take that away. But there do be times that, I've been in class in undergrad level, the master's level, and think like, am I in this program because I worked hard and I deserve it? Or am I in this program because they need that one man of color to put on their website, to talk internally within the faculty about diversity and inclusiveness and stuff like that? So it definitely raises eyebrows, and I ask questions like that. And you said, do I feel like, is there enough resources for men of color like myself? I don't know if I've been looking hard enough or haven't looked at all, but I do feel like it should be more present in terms of like resources and programs, and also, just other things like faculty connecting with students of men of color of similar backgrounds, similar identities, as well as, of course, I can't tell the faculty who to admit and who they let into their programs, any programs, undergrad and masters, but it'd be good to possibly have more than one or two black students or one or two Latino students in a program full of white or black, So if you're going to be diverse and inclusive, maybe it'd be good to have an even number, of those students. Maybe strive more to try to get Black or Latino or men or women of color into the program, just to show that you really accept all races, all identities and stuff like that. So it raises questions, raises eyebrows, but I appreciate where I'm at. But it could always be better, because the same way they celebrate and show recognition to other cultures and stuff like that, I do ask myself, do they do that for African American cultures? Do they do that for African American students and things like that? And sometimes they do because they get in trouble. Sometimes they do it because they don't want to get backlash from not doing it. So it raises questions about that, about sense of belonging and identity, and school systems being an African American student and / men of color. Ray, how do you feel about being a man of color? And do you feel like the programs you've been into, your undergrad, junior college, undergrad, and higher education, and masters, do you feel like they've shown appreciation to your identity and made you feel like you belong here, outside of just telling you that at conferences and in classes? Do they make you feel that by showing cultural appreciation, cultural, gratitude for, your culture and your identity as a Latino student?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think personally for me, I've always looked for community at the colleges that I've been a part of. I was a reverse transfer, and I feel like I didn't really value my studies a whole lot going directly to a 4-year. I was very underprepared, and I did very, very, very poorly. Just focusing on soccer maybe a little bit too much. But when I did, when I did get over to my community college, which was Riverside City College, there I did feel a sense of belonging actually, which was. It was a little bit unusual for me because I was experiencing a little bit of imposter syndrome, going directly to a 4-year and not really doing very well. So feeling as though I didn't belong there with the other students it really ate into my self-esteem. But I think community college it's especially in Riverside, which is historically there's more diversity in Riverside. It is a community that does have a larger Latino population. So there, I really did see myself, as one of the other students, and I felt like I did belong, which led to me to do well, right? And I think that's one of the keys that we really just want to touch into today is sense of belonging is very important, because if you feel like an outsider, if you feel like you don't belong, you're not going to really have anybody to to message, to ask hey, what assignment is due today. You're not going to have that community to really fall back on when times get tough. And I think as college students, you really do need that community. And when I did make the transfer over to Cal State Long Beach, I noticed that I needed that personally for me to do well, because at Lost Year University, I felt like I was on my own, and I didn't want to experience that anymore. So I joined Hermanos Unidos, which fortunately, there's communities like that, or clubs like that, organizations that have been developed for students like myself, men of color like myself, and I was able to take advantage of those opportunities. So I really feel for those students that maybe don't have those same resources at their colleges, in communities that might not have as much diversity, and they may be forgotten about at those colleges. So I can only imagine the struggles that they go through, feeling as though they don't belong. And just on top of that, coming into this program, I do feel a sense of belonging. At first, I thought I wasn't going to. There's a lot of stereotypes about USC and the USC experience, but I think in this program that really embodies this equity mindset, that they've been able to implement that into the program. So I see a lot of men of color like myself in this program, and I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of really good people that have supported me here at USC, and I only wish that students outside of this program feel the same way, which I'm not sure if they do, to be quite honest, because I've heard things, just students saying that the USC experience outside of Ross years, it might not be what we're accustomed to. So I think that's a question to kind of be asked, and then we can, hopefully the school is able to address that in the coming years, but to make all students feel as though they belong, because sense of belonging is very important in terms of what it means personally, professionally, and academically. So that's kind of my take on it, guys.
I love your take. And before we transition to Miguel's sense of it, thinking about like what you said, being here in the Ross Year program as a man of color. Yeah, I've thought that to myself all the time since day one. Is like, why am I here? But even with that question, my inner voice has always told me is like, even if you are the only male African American student, you represent for the ones who couldn't get in, or you represent the ones who are interested in applying, and you let them know that it's possible for them to do it. It's possible for them to, just stand out and be where I'm at in my position with the Ross Year program or in the master's program, anywhere they would like. Miguel, how you feel?
I feel this topic, some of the materials that we've covered, it's really talking about both undocumented students and also men of color, which are two underrepresented groups within higher education. And, some of the challenges that they have are similar, but they obviously have their differences. I think one of the biggest aspects is the sense of belonging that students may or may not have. For undocumented students, their legal status plays a big role in their college experience. And also the limited amount of undocumented students that there are in higher education and also within the workforce. But it's also similar to men of color, where they're also underrepresented within higher education. They have a difficult time often interacting with other students, faculty, and staff. Sometimes too because of the masculinity that exists within men of color communities. So it's hard to break some of these cycles, especially when you do need that help. So I think that's an important topic that needs to be addressed within institutions to make sure that all students are properly served. I think there needs to be a lot of attention, a lot of policies and equitable educational practices to ensure that the students' populations are receiving the support they need. Just because, we've seen their low enrollment, their low retention and graduation rates. And it's not because they don't want to graduate. It's because there's other problems that aren't being addressed to really make sure that these students feel properly supported. Yeah.
Love it, Miguel. Love it. And on to the next question, our last question, how does having to work affect sense of belonging for students? In a positive way for that question, how does having to work affect sense of belonging for students? I mean, I just look at the good in it. No matter if I may be the only black student in my graduate program or even the only black student in my workforce, it's another way for me to stand out. And outside of that, just always think positive and just just stand out and just show them that you're not the black person who's just here because they need a black person working here. You're because you belong to be here. You deserve to work here, and you put good, strong initiative to be here and to stand out from other students and other coworkers. How you feel about that, Ray?
Yeah, thanks for touching on that, Vincent. Yeah, I agree. And just to kind of add to that, I think that when we're thinking about how work affects a sense of belonging, I think about the financial component, of course, and how for some students that, they're fortunate enough not to have to work, they come from wealthy families, it allows them to really feel a sense of belonging even more because they have the time to allocate towards, joining clubs and really getting involved on campus, where I feel as though other students, specifically undocumented students that may have to work a little bit more than the average student, they don't have the same time that they can really spend at the campus to make those connections with other students. So I think that's kind of like the bigger topic that I think about in terms of how work can affect a sense of belonging. But on top of that, I do believe that students who come from like who have that capital to really just prioritize education and being involved on campus, that can go a really long way in terms of what it can mean for them academically, and being able to join clubs, being able to really get involved with the campus can impact them like positively in so many different ways. And I really feel for the undocumented students that they have to work multiple jobs in order to come up with the financial means necessary to attend the college that they are attending, because that takes away from the time that they have to really build community. And community at the end of the day it's a necessity. It really is, in terms of just what it could provide for you, the support that you feel, and having that support is crucial to really your academic performance, and ultimately just graduating and really developing the skills necessary to make an impact after you do get your degree, and to hopefully like join the workforce. But yeah, I think that's kind of what I think about. So how do you feel about that, Miguel?
Yeah, I think you bring up an important fact about undocumented students is that, they have limited financial aid that they receive, which is why they may often have to work extra hours in comparison to other students. But also, too, is the jobs that they're working, because they don't qualify for federal work study. So they're often not working on campus. It's really hard for them to get those positions, just because those positions are usually prioritized towards students on federal work studies, which saves like the institution a lot of money. And then also for students that don't have DACA, it's really hard for them to work in jobs that are going to better prepare them for when they do graduate. So instead, they're working menial labor jobs that often underpay them, and which is one of the reasons as to why they have to work extra hours. I think working is part of like the college experience for many students, but it's just unfortunate for undocumented students that even in that area there are still limited opportunities. And for men of color too, they're often instilled with the belief early on in their life that they have to, when they become of age, when they're 18, that they should start making money, being the breadwinners of the family. So they're often posed with that difficult decision of having to work immediately to provide for their family or continue their education. And for the students that do choose to pursue their education, they do work, often part-time, and also go to school part-time, which may prolong their graduation day. But overall, it's just like working has a big implication on both undocumented and men of color students, as they're not just only able to focus on their education, they also have a bunch of other priorities. And that kind of wraps up our convo for today. We'll have Vincent close us out.
Appreciate that, Miguel. And as we're wrapping it up, the overall thing, for a sense of belonging for both men of color and I would say for both, a combination of sense of belonging for undocumented students. As we got the Dream Act and AB 540, why not put together a whole program that just for undocumented students? So that way, when they don't feel comfortable around other programs or departments, they can go to their own section, similar to an EOPS, similar to a Umoja, similar to a Puente's program. But nonetheless, though, I just want to thank you guys for listening and tuning in to our topics and our critiques on how we feel about these topics that we had. And you guys have a good day. Fight on.
Fight on.